Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you to this panel discussion on the topic, can we make TB treatment short and safe? Here on. So, I also request our distinguished panelist to come on dais and take their seat. And first is Dr. Sanjay Kumar Mattoo from CTD. Sir, please. Second is Dr. Anuj Bhatnagar from RBIPMT. Welcome, sir. Dr. Narendran Gopalan from NIRT. Dr. Sandeep Juneja from TB Alliance. Dr. Sangeeta Sharma from IHBAS. Dr. Vijaya Lakshmi Valluri from BMMRC. Please, ma'am. And we are expecting Dr. Madhur Gupta to join us shortly. So I also request Dr. Sanjeev Nair to come, who's our moderator for this session. Please, welcome. Round of applause. Finish. So I'll hand over it to Dr. Nair, who's our moderator. Sir, over to you. Please start the session.
Thank you. Let me start by thanking the organizers of this summit for this opportunity to interact with all of you. We have an eminent group of panelists here who are experts in the field, and we'll be listening to them. Of course, our major constraint is time, and I'm sure each of the panelists can speak to us on hours on this topic, but then we'll have to keep to time and probably keep. So my job for the day is also to be a policeman and to stop my panelists from exceeding time. So that is a major issue. From the morning, if you've been attending the sessions, you must have heard that everybody is excited about shorter regimes. So tuberculosis is a disease with treatment being quite long. For long, we thought that drug-sensitive TB is 6 months of treatment, and drug-resistant TB is you don't even know the duration. We used to treat for 3 years in all patients. So suddenly, it's a welcome move that evidence is coming forward, which has helped us to reduce the duration. We welcome our last panelist, Dr. Madhur, also to join us. So it is in that context that we are looking forward to the currently existing shorter regimes and also something that is coming up in the future. We've been hearing that in the morning. So let us start the panel. I'll start with Dr. Anuj Bhatnagar, who is our go-to person, the clinician par excellence, a researcher par excellence, and also a person who's into the TB program for years and years. Are we going to put up the CV slides on that? Yeah. So if you can just put Dr. Anuj's slide here. So Dr. Anuj, you have been in the program for long. Your wish list and my wish list would be almost similar. So in the context of what we have been doing in the past, you have been doing this for the last 30 years. Can you all put all our participants today in the context of why we need these shorter regimes and why we desire these regimes so badly?
See, I think we all know that, TB is one of the diseases where the treatment is long. Used to be long earlier, but now with gradual new researches, it has shortened, but still it is not shortened enough for a patient to complete and then remain healed for some time. Now, I come from a time when RNTCP was being formulated, and that is the time when in the previous NTEP there was a regimen which was containing injections. It used to continue for 1 to 1.5 years. The number of drugs, fine. The number of drugs also had an injection. It also had an injection. And injections came with its own set of logistics, side effects, and ultimately sequelae. And any particular drug that the patient used to miss, the patient used to develop resistance. The number of drugs is limited, we all know that. Use a particular number of drugs in combination, that's a problem. That's a problem with TB. You have to attack all the compartments. There are 4 compartments in the body in which the bacillus is there. You attack all the compartments. So the first problem that comes is you don't have drugs which are a drug which is attacking simultaneously all the compartments together. You had to combine different drugs. Each drug came with its own side effects. Each drug came with its own duration, and it is the regimen ultimately which was tested in the trials. Coming to MDR TB, the same thing used to happen. We started from a regimen which was having a large number of drugs, larger the number, more the chances that the patient might attribute certain side effects to a particular drug and stop taking the drug. The moment you stop taking the drug, there are chances that it will not act. Form an inadequate combination or an improper combination, the patient will either not get cured or the patient will relapse very fast. And when he relapses, he will actually relapse with a bacillus that is resistant to these. So you had to choose a regimen. You had to choose a regimen when the patient, one of the biggest problems was also, the patient initially used to feel fine. And he used to, in fact, we had to explain to the patient that yes, please continue with the regimen. The course is not over. The course is not over because unless you take the entire course, you will not get cured. The patients did not used to understand. They in fact used to go to their jobs and all, stop the medicines, interrupt the medicines, did not complete the regimens, and thus the instances of default were more. This led to an increased number of sequelae and deaths, complications and deaths. You will find that at that time, the TB deaths were quite a number of them. Unfortunately, the problem is coming, the problem is still here. In fact, the larger the disease used to spread, they used to also spread to the community. You don't take it properly, you will spread in the community, and there are chances that you might spread a bacillus that is not effective to these drugs so the patient is taking. So in short, longer the drugs, more the side effects. In fact, program logistics, more the number of drugs, more complex is the logistics for the program. Then the costing, then the side effects, and finally the outcome of the regimen. What happens to the outcome when a patient is, quite a number of your patients, 1/4 of your patients are stopping the treatment before completion of the drugs, or they are dying. And finally, at the end, the patient is ending as a respiratory cripple with quite a number of life years compromised or lost. A wish list, an ideal wish list for a clinician like us, which I was told at one time in my MD, was that you have to have one drug which takes care of all the compartments within the shortest possible time, preferably 7 days, and the patient doesn't get the disease back. But that remains a wish list. But probably we might reach there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anuj. We'll move forward. Our go-to man when it comes to evidence, particularly evidence from India, who is Dr. Narendran here, sitting to my left. He is trained as a clinician, but he is more into full-time into research now, and he has been a PI of many of the studies which probably we'll be discussing throughout the day today, and is an expert in all the newer drugs that we use for us in India. So, Dr. Narendran, in this context, could you just share with us some of your experience and the evidence in favor, particularly the Indian evidence in favor of the shorter regimes that some of them which are already implemented or upcoming in India?
Thank you, sir. With your permission, if I can stand there, that will be a little easier for me. Can you project the slides? Yeah. See, always everybody praises the hero, but always forgets the stuntman. So the most important thing is trying to get research evidences. So when we treat these patients, the apprehension in the minds of the physician as well as the patient. Shortening TB treatment is very, very important. There are various strategies. With a shortage of time, I don't want to go, but that's why I projected as a slide. So the initial idea was to either remove ethambutol or isoniazid, add a quinolone. And now it comes to either giving rifampicin or high-dose rifampicin. There are trials to start where we are planning to use high-dose rifampicin in place of rifampicin, and then I'll come to the newer drugs shortly.
Okay, continue speaking.
When it comes to the context of shortening TB treatments, very many trials have been have undergone and got completed. The Achilles tendon of shortening TB treatment is recurrences. It's not the failures, it's not the deaths, which are usually 2% to 3% under ideal conditions, but it's only the recurrences. The more you shorten the TB treatment, as rightly said by my colleague, Dr. Anuj sir, the persisters are the problem. And we don't know in which kind of metabolically active or inactive position the bacilli is, but again it reverts back once the drug exposure is removed. Next slide. So this is where all of them have crossed the non-inferiority margins, and we are not able to prove that they are efficient enough. Next slide, please. Then coming to evidences, and how many people in this August gathering know that we were the first to initiate ofloxacin for anti-tuberculosis therapy. This happened in 1980s. It was called Study 13 of TRC, Tuberculosis Research Center. Then we moved on to using ofloxacin and trying to reduce it to either 4 months or 5 months. That was the first trial, and we found that the relapses are only 2% and 4%. Not to forget that over the years, AMR is also increasing. So microbial resistance is increasing. We know that quinolone resistance is increasing. So we should keep that in mind. When we used ofloxacin or any of the quinolones, when you use it in the intermittent stage, at that time as RNTCP, we used to have intermittent therapy or thrice weekly therapy. We found that they were not a good partner in intermittent therapy. So the study almost got vanished. The last one is the trial where we used moxifloxacin in addition to the 4 first-line drugs, where we found that it was really useful in shortening TB treatment. The only criticism was that it was compared to an intermittent regimen, not a daily regimen. Now let us come to the MDR TB. In MDR TB, we know that we were part of the STREAM Stage 2 trial. It was the first. It was a licensing trial for bedaquiline. In fact, we were on tiptoes because of the cardiotoxicity, which was anticipated at that time. Myself, Anuj sir, Dr. Solanki, and all that. But we found that it's not a big problem now. If you say QTC is prolonged, what happens? It's not a big problem. There are other problems with bedaquiline. So that was the thing, and we were the first to give the 9 months oral regimen, which is called the short oral regimen, which got into the program. And we were the first to show that the safety of bedaquiline given for more than 6 months. And it can be easily given. Now it has program has taken a great leap and it has gone to the stage of advocating it for pediatric as well. The second one is the BPALM, which is currently is being implemented. And again, the question is, we have had enough. I don't want to get into the details, but the BPAL, all that it showed was linezolid, which is the culprit which causes toxicity in almost 50% of cases, can be reduced and managed by reducing the dosage, because Indians do not tolerate to the extent as the other international people. The last one is we are going to get multiple options with respect to the NTB trial. So many regimens are going to come. We are a part of the guidelines group for WHO as well, which are also in the very, very close to coming into the program. Last slide. Whenever we think of shortening TB treatment, this is my most lovable slide. We have to stratify disease. We know that 80% of patients do not require more than 4 months. 15% do not require more than 6 months. 5% require not less than 6 months. We do not know which is this 5%. So that is the biggest trick with TB. So that's why it has been able to survive for ages, not like COVID to perish so easily. So that requires a lot of other, we have to go out of the way to find out other techniques like stratification. None of the parameters are very distinctive. We are actually looking at simulations to find out where we can easily categorize limited and extensive. Apart from using what is called Bayesian approach, it's not easy for me to cover up in 5 minutes. If you have any doubts, you can revert back to us. We'll be able to answer you. Thank you so much, sir, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Narendran. So in short, what he's told us is that, the evidence for many of these shorter regimes has come from his side and from our teams in India, which is very important for us because of as clinicians or as Dr. Mattoo as a program manager, to get regulatory approval, we need our own evidence, and that evidence is readily available, which takes us further. I'll move forward. So in the morning, I don't know if you've been hearing the presentations in the morning. If you heard many of the presentations, one of the facts which came up is, everybody is looking for more, like you say, dil mange more. So, you're not satisfied with whatever shorter is coming. You want even further shorter regimes. Dr. Anuj was just saying he wants one drug which can be given for a short time. So we still are looking for what new can come. And we have Dr. Sandeep, Juneja, who was, building towards some very exciting new things which might come up. So it's an innovation summit, and probably he'll share with us some of his experience in bringing this even shorter. So what we discussed right now is 4 months for drug-sensitive TB, 6 months of drug-resistant TB. Can it be even shorter? Over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev, and good afternoon, everyone. So I agree with everything Dr. Anuj said. about treatment is just too long. And when we began working at TB Alliance on BPAL, treatment used to be 20 months, and it was brutal. You know it. You've handled patients in the field. You understand that. But cut to the present. DRTB treatment, who would have thought, is the same duration as DSTB treatment in the same scale. I mean, DSTB has also come down to 4 months if you follow the rifampicin regimen, but we are talking about the same scale. Was not seen as possible a few years ago. It is now. And very manageable, as we are seeing around the world, many countries implementing BPAL, BPAL-M. Linezolid used to be this very complicated drug people didn't want to touch. After a year or two, it's complex. I get that. It's complex, but people are able to manage it. So what's the next big leap? We think the next big leap can be a 1 month treatment. Not still a week that we see, Dr. Anuj, so far, but we see a 1 month universal treatment for all forms of active TB as a real possibility. And imagine if that were to happen. Obviously, from the person who's suffering with TB, their point of view, it's a no-brainer. It'll be fantastic. But from the program point of view, it'll take away the need for incessant follow-up with the patient for 6 months. If it's a universal treatment, it takes away the need to do drug susceptibility testing, which is expensive, which is time-consuming, and frankly not available in many parts of the world. So you can do away with that. But how would that happen? So there are two transformative changes that are happening. One is they're highly potent drugs in the same categories of drugs that we are experienced with that are coming up. So one of them is TBAJ876. It doesn't have a name. It's a TB Alliance research compound. Second generation diarylquinoline in the same class as bedaquiline that we are very familiar with. In preclinical study, it has shown much higher potency than bedaquiline. And rapidly acting, and it has a long half-life. Now apply that. So that's one thing, highly potent drugs in known categories. And the other is use technologies that have not been used in TB so far, which have helped cut down treatment length in other chronic diseases and help simplify treatments. I'm talking about long-acting injectables. They've been successfully applied to HIV, to schizophrenia, to other chronic diseases. So bring the two things together, potent drugs with long-acting injectables. So you can get the coverage that Dr. Gopalan was speaking about for several months, and you can get rapid killing in the first few weeks. So that is what, now it's not a vision, it's not a concept. TB Alliance is working on it right now. In fact, that's the main thing that we do now after we finished working on BPAL. So the question is not if anymore that this is possible. The question is how and when. And how is really the strategy, bring these two technologies together. And when is honestly the question of commitment. It's the current economic situation and the international donor situation is making things tricky for everybody who's doing this kind of work. But I think it's also an opportunity here because high burden countries, rapidly growing upcoming economies like India, Indonesia, South Africa, they have a stake in these inventions. And what better time to speak about it than at this innovation summit is to express really interest in these kind of technologies and get involved in their development. Because then you can dictate and direct the future of these technologies and incorporate them in your own programs. And if you do that, honestly, growing economies need not to be distracted by TB, not to be distracted by infectious diseases. So I think there is that future, which is very real, very possible.
Thank you. I mean, we are all really excited about this. I mean, from the morning, we've been hearing that everybody is excited. We might have newer drugs and newer shorter regimes. In this context of all this science and development which occurs, I always feel sorry for my MD students. They would have just learned something, and the next day something new comes and it'll learn the whole thing all over again. You feel the disappointment and the frustration. And a person who would be more frustrated than that is Dr. Mattoo here. He, as such, I work very closely with him, so I know his difficulties. See, it's one thing putting the evidence there, it's another thing getting the drugs in place, getting regulatory approvals, getting people trained. If you order drugs in plenty and suddenly your program doesn't take it up to that extent, drugs will get expired. If you ordered less, then you will be blamed for not having enough drugs. It's a very difficult job for the national level program manager like Dr. Mattoo. There are so many challenges. I will not take his time, but over to Dr. Mattoo. I mean, the evidence is there. There is so much coming up. What is the challenge? How does the program deal with it?
Thank you, Dr. Nair, for asking this question. I will start my response where Dr. Bhatnagar ended his response. So basically, do we want to eat the medicines? Like we are discussing the shortening of the regimen. Nobody want to eat the medicine. We want to eat the pizza, the sweets, everything. Why? Because it is some helplessness and it is necessity. We have to take the medicine, and definitely we have to take the medicine. Then what may be the least number of the medicines person has to take, for the lesser duration it has to take. Dr. Bhatnagar's wish list was that one drug for 7 days. Somebody may have the wish list, we want to have one magic pill, only single dose, and that can cure the TB. So this is the thing, as a person, human beings, we would like to have those kind of things in system. But there is some other science are also there. Dr. Gopalan was suggesting that if we see any regimen, and usually if DRTB or DSTB, within 3 weeks, usually we find that sputum conversion is there. But the biggest threat and the fear is that recurrence happens. So that is why this is the challenge. Now coming up to this, what Dr. Nair was suggesting, that when we are taking up this newer regimens, what are the challenges? So program is adopting all the science, newer science and evidences which have been developed across the country. What has happened that sometimes we need the because we are having different ethnicity, and there we want to have some country evidences also. Like in case of the recent new regimen BPALM, it was a global recommendation, and the country also had our own evidence where NIRT supported this for generating the evidence. This is one thing. Second thing is that when we are having this regimen, we always go ahead with the technology. Right now we are having the 5 regimens are there in the program. We are having one for DSTB, it is a 6-month regimen, then 4 regimen for the DRTB, one is for H monopoly, then for multi-drug resistance, it is the 3 regimens are there. One is the BPALM, which will cover in nowadays almost 90% of the MDR-TB cases. Then we will be having shorter oral regimen, which will be coming up to 8 to 9% of MDR-TB, and remaining will be 1 to 2%, which will be needing the longer oral regimen. So we are having these things. But when we want to implement these things in the program, as Dr. Nair was suggesting, that it is something fear in the mind of the MD students, where they have to remember. In program, we are having different challenges. Like when we want to implement these, already sometimes if you are having too frequent regimens, suppose there are 2 to 3 new regimens come in a year. When we make the procurement for the country, it is usually goes into 1 year procurement. So we have to sometimes deal with the expiry and loss. This is the currency loss, the revenue loss to the country. So that is one challenge we are having. Other thing is that whenever the new evidence is there, a clinical trial and the programming implementation totally different. In the trials, we are having the standard protocols, and when we are implementing these new regimens at the country level, at the peripheral field level, usually same kind of protocols implementation will be always challenge, and we need to have the strict monitoring for that. Supposedly this new regimen is there, BPALM, where we are implementing. So it is now we have reduced a 2 years regimen to the 6-month regimen. So we want to ensure that adherence is there. We want to ensure that a patient need to continue the medicine. We want to see that patient does not develop the relapses also. So that is why the post-treatment follow-up, then proper monitoring. And for the newer regimen, we need to have some experts also who can monitor timely basis. But when you are in the field level, you don't find such kind of expertise in the because PHC level, block level, you may not find those expertise. So those are the challenges which usually program faces a lot. And now what we are doing in the BPALM, we are saying that we are engaging each TB patient to the nodal DRTB center, where we are having the our core committees there, where pulmonologists and other specialists are there, and they can monitor regularly and they can be approached whenever the need is there. So program is covering up those challenges, but still at the field level you will find many gaps are there, and proper follow-up, usually the post-treatment follow-up where the relapse is there in these new regimen, we have to ensure that. And Dr. Bhatnagar was there when we just enrolled this BPALM. He was always saying that we have to have this physical dose of the TB patient BPALM, so that we can ensure that they are taking all number of the required medicines and they can be closely followed up. So these are things we are taking up, and we are also learning with the new evidences, and we try to implement into the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mattoo. Dr. Mattoo touched upon one of the major issues with the regimens is they are short, and he was worried about the recurrence. Dr. Narendran also was pointing it out. So one of the problems when recurrence occurs, or if like Dr. Mattoo was suggesting, if drugs are not taken properly, is our worry on drug resistance. I met Dr. Sangeeta Sharma for the first time today, and I've seen your excellent work in antimicrobial resistance in the past. But if you remember Dr. Soumya Swaminathan's presentation in the morning, she was saying that all over the world there is excellent work happening currently on antimicrobial resistance, but that doesn't really apply to TB. So TB is not really going into that kind of umbrella. TB has got its own challenges, a different way of approaching. So how would you feel? I mean, our worry is that these are some very beautiful new drugs that we have. As one of the panelists in the morning session was speaking on about 10% bedaquiline resistance in certain countries in the world. So how do we protect these key drugs? You're having bedaquiline and all this. So how do we keep them effective? So preventing resistance.
I think protection, we need to protect all antibiotics, all antimicrobials, and TB is also one of them. We have come very far now, from incurable to curable. First line were effective, then second line, we have seen the fate of it. Now MDR is rising. The answer to, we have very good policies, we have very good regimen, but on the ground, the major problem always had been, we did prescription audits many years ago, and 1 or 2 years ago again we did it. We found, despite having a proper regimen, many different combinations regimens are being used at the ground level. That's the biggest problem. So after having these guidelines, we need to implement this at the health facility level. So the one very good uh, proven way of ensuring that these antimicrobials are used optimally is an antimicrobial stewardship program. And principles, the strategies, interventions are, I think, are the same if you talk about the antimicrobials in general, or if you talk about anti-tuberculars in specific. Now, coming to, what do you mean by stewardship? Stewardship is nothing but a coordinated set of actions that you do, where you combine your policies, your standard protocols, and infection control. So I call this as a marriage between the policy and the infection control, because if you don't tackle both at the same time, you will not be able to cure this. So we need to look into the infection prevention and control part as well. Now, coming to the specific strategies that could work with anti-tubercular drugs is, first and foremost, is that the patients should be selected properly for this regimen. Any misclassification of these patients for this shorter regimen can misfire here, because there are certain eligibility criteria: rifampicin resistant or MDR. There has to be sensitivity to fluoroquinolones. So and majorly this is applies to pulmonary disease. focus is there. And if the patient is having severe disease or there are other problems in this patient, perhaps this regimen may not apply. So the antimicrobial stewardship committee, the team, has to look into it, make a very robust criteria for eligibility of this patient for this regimen. Second, the facility should have DST facility, because without doing, if you you need to ensure that there is no previous resistance to it. So, and this should be made mandatory. So no therapeutic trials. This is another problem at the facility level clinically. But sometimes you are not able to hit the diagnosis. So I have still seen people saying, okay, we will give you a therapeutic trial. So no trials here. DST should be mandatory. And then not only at the initial, then from time to time you should be repeating. Then data is your eye. If you don't measure it, you will not address this. That is the dictum, and I see it being applicable in many situations. So same is true here, that you make these guidelines, you adapt it to your local level, whatever regimen you want to use in your health facility. But if you don't monitor trends, if you don't look at what's happening, who are the patients who are, and if you don't look at the outcomes, perhaps we will not be sure whether these interventions are making any impact or not. Then of course therapeutic drug monitoring for select patients where these are not working would be helpful. Then the team, I think you were mentioning about the team. uh, we should have infectious disease specialist on our team, and if TB specialists are there, that would be good, because it is very important to discuss the complex cases to get a second opinion. So again, you need to see whether that mechanism is working. On paper this mechanism is there, but whether people are using this mechanism or not, whether your intervention, this mechanism is working, and what is it that is going into this, what are the trends here. So these are some of the broad things. Then one small intervention action, stewardship action, that can help, but I find a lot of clinicians being very hesitant about it, all in the name of that we are very busy, we don't have time. Documentation of all these things. When did this action plan start, action phase start, acute phase started, continuation phase? Nikshay could be a very good platform for monitoring trends, because you need real time data, and you need to rapidly adjust this regimen for that particular patient. Programmatic, I understand too many programmatic changes will undermine the strategies for TB elimination. But at a patient level, at a health facility level, we need to have real time data for this.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
stewardship will help you in getting all these things in place, and then you can say whether it is working or not.
Valuable points, but we are short of time. I would allow to listen to you more. I think one of the things for clinicians, Dr. Anuj and me, the wish list at the top of it for preventing resistance is directly observed treatment under direction. We have been pushing Dr. Mattoo and others. So we'll come to that later. We'll move on because we have two more panelists left. The other concern we have with these new regimes and everything has been the adverse effects. So when Bidaculin came for the first time, the drug arm actually had much higher mortality as compared to the control arm. Later, we found that Bidaculin was rather safe. So it's experience which told us. Pitomenid, when we made the first presentation in our national training, and I was given the job, and when I read through, there is actually no evidence at all, because Pitomenid has not been used as a single drug for any indication. It has always been used in combination. So we don't even know what are the adverse effects of these drugs, and it is only experience. So, Dr. Madhur, with your experience in drug safety, the major worry that the program and the clinician both have is how do we ensure that the drugs are safe, and how do we monitor for that, and how do we do the reporting and the rest of it?
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. And I think listening from the other co-panelists with such rich discussions, and the newer, shorter regimens are a welcome step. But, safety is of critical paramount importance. And these drugs, whether it is BPAL-M, or the bedaquiline earlier, they have been brought to the market after very controlled clinical trials, randomized controlled trials with phase 2b or phase 3 data in place, which has very sort of sanitized indications and inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, etc. So the real world evidence is the key to elicit the adverse drug reactions which are going to be coming from the newer regimens which are being introduced in the national TB programs all over the world. And we at WHO India Country Office, we have been actually engaged with the national TB program for more than a decade now in strengthening the pharmacovigilance and safety monitoring systems. And I'll give you the example of bedaquiline. When bedaquiline was included under the conditional access program in the national TB program, RNTCP, in the ministry, there was a dedicated active pharmacovigilance program which was launched, and there were trainings organized for medical officers, statistical officers, the TB centers on causality assessment. So similar kind of active surveillance approach would have to be adopted for these newer regimens which are now inducted in the program, where we look at a structured way to elicit and collect and gather these ADRs. And we have to leverage NICSHE also, because it's something which is available to us as a software. So that can definitely help. Causality assessment, coming back to it. If you look at causality assessment, and if you are the patient and you are having this regimen, BPAL-M, and you are having some side effect or adverse drug reaction, you would not know whether it is due to B, or it is P, or it is L, or it is M. So attributing causality to either of these four is a very, very tricky issue, which requires training in causality, assigning causality, identifying that this is the causal agent, and at what time to stop the regimen and withdraw. I think Dr. Anuj and even some others I can identify, they were there in the bedaquiline effort when we had the bedaquiline effort of strengthening pharmacovigilance systems in the country. We rolled out national TOT workshops. Similar kind of a drive for safety monitoring will have to be planned. And we also have to leverage the presence of Pharmacovigilance Program of India. It's a national program under the Ministry of Health. It has 1,000+ centers, which are medical colleges, which are departments of pharmacology, private and public hospitals. It's a big network, and many of them have research associates. They have a signal review panel which looks at new signals. So all those would need to be leveraged. We would be happy to contribute as WHO in this endeavor. And just to also quote that recently in the past 4 to 5 years in the ministry, with the help of other stakeholders, WHO has also brought out the smart safety surveillance approach, which ran across 3 new product lines. One was bedaquiline in Armenia, and tafenoquine for malaria in another part of the world. And we in India were handed over rotavirus vaccine because it was our own vaccine. And we basically did a sentinel surveillance with the help of Ministry of Health, THSTI, and about 15 sentinel sites which triangulated the data of adverse events and brought out a white paper. So active sentinel surveillance sites approach, cohort event monitoring approach, active pharmacovigilance approach will have to be adopted. And just to conclude by saying that, in the regulatory world, when we say regulatory recalls of a drug, it is hardly ever due to ineffectiveness or lack of efficacy. It is 99% due to safety concerns, safety issues, adverse drug events. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Dr. Madhur and Dr. Sangeeta Sharma, I think one of the issues that probably we will not have time today to discuss, but I think we'll be contributing to a kind of white paper to this innovation workshop also. One of the issues is going to be that TB treatment is run at the periphery. So, it goes up to the field worker. So many of the things that you probably mentioned may the patient would be very far away from those mechanisms, because physically, because I work at the periphery, I know. So our pharmacovigilance centers are somewhere, and the pharmacovigilance associate only sits there. They don't go out to the field, which is not part of their mandate. They get limited to their institutions, and some of these institutions hardly see any TB patients, because MDR TB is managed in nodal centers which are elsewhere. So I think those are some of the challenges. We'll probably discuss it outside of this meeting, and maybe when we bring out a document to the program on that, we will cover those issues as well. So for our last panelist, Madam has done, Dr. Vijaya has done excellent work in the immunology of TB, and so much of innovative work which is happening. So one of the challenges, as we discussed earlier, was the fact that you're giving short treatment, 6 months of treatment. Will there be a recurrence? Is there some way we can strengthen the body's immunity? Can we bring in new innovations which can actually help that these shorter regimes work better? So over to Dr. Vijay for some of your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm the odd person here, probably. Yes, while all the co-panelists have been talking about tackling the bacteria using antibiotics, my interest is, can we enhance the immunity of the host in some way? Because it's eventually immunity that would protect an individual. Only about 10% of those are exposed to TB have active disease. The remaining 90% are being protected. So what happens to these 10%? Is their immunity low? It's compromised in some way? And what is it, or how is it that we can enhance? So when you talk about immunity, there can be two aspects of it. The mycobacterial peptides or antigens can either elicit a protective immune response, or they can dampen the immune response, which can be favorable to the bug. So can we dampen these detrimental responses, or can we enhance the protective immune responses is the question. Some work has been done. You can find it in literature. Some therapeutic vaccines have been used, especially the non-tuberculous mycobacteria, which are inactivated, or detoxified peptides of mycobacteria have also been used to enhance immunity. And they have seen that there's an early clearance of the sputum, and there's some radiological improvement earlier than just by giving the drugs. Other issues are that, can we administer cytokines? Can we use cytokine inhibitors? Can we use other metabolites? So there are several studies which have been done. Because in the best interest of time, I would go into the details. But we ourselves established cohorts, longitudinal cohorts, both children and adults. And we looked for early biomarkers to see, especially in healthy household contacts of TB patients. Can we have predictive biomarkers? Yes, we can. So can we predict? Can we monitor? Can we do tests to see whether their immunity is improving? To our surprise, we saw that T4 is low in adolescents, especially in these household contacts. It was eventually they who developed TB at the end of 2 years after follow-up. So can we, should T4 or the thyroid hormones be looked into, or any other aspects? So there are some studies which have been done, but I don't think anything has seen the light of the day. We could probably plan some clinical trials and see if we can enhance the immune system.
Thank you, madam. I think it's a very interesting area for the youngsters to take up, because, like madam said, I also had a opportunity to talk on this in our national conference, and none of those things have really moved from the lab to real practice. So there is a lot of scope for doing more research, and that's very exciting. And the possibilities in that are quite. We were hoping to have some time for audience question and audience discussion, but organizers tell me that we are run out of time. In fact, I was hoping for some final remarks. One point. Yeah. You can take the mic, yeah.
Under the stewardship interventions, watch group these fluoroquinolones come under watch group, moxifloxacin, we need to protect. So besides these anti-tubercular regimens that we are saying, we also need to watch the usage of these fluoroquinolones.
And the reserve category as well.
Reserve, yeah.
You know, the American classification of antibiotics, which has been included in the national list of
It has come in the schedule H1. The program has been, and
the NLEM of India
and
has
the
included.
states are actually monitoring.
It's their third and fourth
Yeah.
generation fluoroquinolones and cephalosporins, and but here we need to look at we have to curb use of these drugs for other illnesses.
Definitely. So I think one of the gains of the program in India is that bedaquiline is not that freely available. So these drugs are still under control. Once that control is lost, we really don't know some of the points that Madam raised, indiscriminate use and all would come in. Right now, there are it's very closely guarded drugs that we have. So we are sorry that we could not have time for discussion with you on this topic. Each of the panelists was bringing out very valid and important points. I didn't want to interrupt them, even though I kind of even threatened them that I'll stop you at 4 minutes. But such valid points, important points were coming that I could not stop what was being said. We are run out of time. I'm sure that you'll agree with me that we had an excellent panel here with all the panelists giving us some really valid, pertinent points. Hopefully, they might be around for the next day as well. You could interact with them on any of the thoughts you have, any of the questions you have. With that, I'll conclude the session by thanking all my panelists for their wonderful inputs that you gave into this topic. Thank you. Thank you so much. And also thank the audience, because when we started, the hall was kind of empty, and our panelists were kind of, thinking they'll speak to an empty hall. But then we had all of you joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Nair, and thank you all our distinguished panelists. Now I request Dr. Nair to give them the mementos as a vote of thanks. Thank you. We have continuous sessions for the panel discussion. The next session will start soon. So I would request those who want to stay, please stay.